Hey everybody, welcome back to another build. You know, it felt like it was time to assemble something that has destroyed many friendships. You laugh and you trash talk, and then someone gets hit with a shell right before the finish line, and then it's personal. There's something about this game that brings out the competitive side in pretty much everybody. Maybe it's the items, maybe it's getting the blue shell. Maybe we're all a bunch of jerks. Building the base of this was rather interesting. Going into this project, I wasn't expecting this to be a LEGO Technic build. For those of you unaware, that means that we get a bunch of these little pins and holes and pegs and extremely sore fingers. But that's okay though, because it does add to the challenge. It gives my brain a little bit of an exercise. When you build Lego for a living and sit around all day, any exercise is helpful, at least according to 1 out of 5 doctors. It is nice to start seeing some progress though. Even though it's just the frame, we are starting to see some of the mechanics. This is my first time assembling Lego acceleration and brake pedals. And you know, it's just as thrilling as I ever dreamed it would be. But enough kidding around, it's time to finish the rest of the frame. And if you look closely, you'll see some pieces that are upside down. It completely defies Lego logical sense. And at this point, I don't know how I feel about that. It makes me wonder if I've been building Lego incorrectly my entire life. I guess that answers the question of what I would do if I had a time machine. I would warn my younger self of this development. Next, it was time to build the engine of the kart. And I don't know about you, but so far this doesn't look anything like the go-karts that I've driven in the past. But then again, when I look back, out of the 10 karts that were on the track, there was always one faster than the others. And since I was never in that kart, maybe this is exactly what it looked like. I guess I was too busy trying to compensate for the kart always turning very heavy to the left. So based on that, we'll give the realism score here a 10 out of 10. It was time to assemble more Lego pieces upside down, and that technique is starting to grow on me. It's quite satisfying. Let's move on to the wonderful world of steering wheel columns. Now these I do have experience in. I mean, it's pretty easy. In simple terms, it involves the precise axial alignment and torqued fastening of the splined steering shaft to the intermediate column via a collapsible telescopic housing, which of course incorporates a universal joint coupler. And it's so simple to forget about the integrated clock spring for signal continuity. My favorite part, which I'm sure is yours as well, is the secure engagement of the tilt and ignition lock modules within the column shroud, which gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling when it conforms to vehicular safety compliance tolerances. It's my favorite story, but getting wrapped up in story time distracted me from assembling this correctly. At this point, I had no choice but to do the right thing and take everything apart. But thankfully, I'm also an expert at disassembling. But you know how it goes when you tell stories. It gets so easy to get carried away and miss minor details. But since I'm building for you, I want to make sure that we hit all of the safety regulations. As we all know from Mario Kart, it's pretty dangerous. The last thing that we would ever want is to have a mechanical failure. So as a LEGO engineer, let's take the next step to do the due diligence. All you have to do is put yourself in the shoes of the person that will be driving this kart. And that's the secret to having a good night's sleep. I don't know about you, but I think I'm ready to finish this frame. I mean, go-karting is all about action. It's all about speed. It's all about safety belts, wind burn, tire residue on your clothes, G-force, sore losing, helmet hair, whiplash, back sweat, mystery bruises, regret. Okay, let's get the front of the kart wrapped up. But you know, I'm so excited about racing that I actually made another mistake. But thanks to my master builder abilities, this was an easy fix. And that's great news for Mario. He's going to have excellent aerodynamics. Of course, you need to have a place to sit, and in this case, we're not too worried about comfort. I mean, when's the last time you sat in a comfortable go-kart? I know from my experience, I can say less than one time. Okay, let's talk about the story of Mario Kart cheating while I thank my Patreon members for making this build possible. You may or may not know, but the other drivers in the game literally drive faster than you. It's a technique known as rubber banding. They go faster, you go slower. So if you ever felt like the game was cheating to keep things close, it was. And that's why we have issues with trust. Okay, now it's time to build a LEGO torso. After all, someone has to go inside of this cart. I could be wrong, but I don't think I've ever had the thought of what it would be like to build Mario from Mario Brothers. If you told me that it would involve using rods and gears, I wouldn't believe you. But now that I'm going through this experience, it's starting to make sense. I mean, if we want to have him articulate, there's no better way. I think I'd rather have it this way than learning about plumber anatomy, which probably isn't any different than human anatomy. But then again, we are talking about a plumber who eats mushrooms and grows 2 to 3 times his size. Which is kind of weird considering I've never really stopped to think about that when I play these games. Not only that, but he conjures up fireballs from his hands after touching a flower. And here I just end up contracting mild to moderate floral dermatitis. I'm starting to realize that I don't really appreciate the realism in these Mario games. But that's okay though, I play them for the story. Building this Mario leg has been quite a treat. This is one of those builds that feels like you're assembling a puppet. But I've never assembled a puppet before. So really there's no validity in my reasoning. I've never even held a puppet, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. So I think we'll just have to take my word that this is very puppet-like. Now our character needs to have 2 of the most important things, and that would be both of his arms. And for all the plumbers out there, I'm sure you can agree with me that they're the most important tools for the job. I'm going to go out on a limb here and also assume that plumbers need gloves for what they do. But now it has me thinking, why does Mario wear these white gloves? I would imagine that they would get dirty very quickly. At the same time, I can't imagine Mario without wearing his white gloves. Now, if a plumber showed up to my house wearing gloves like these, I would also ask a lot of questions. This whole situation has me very perplexed, and makes me realize I know nothing about modern plumbing, or ancient plumbing for that matter. When I think Mario, I usually think about his iconic hat or his overalls, but I never really think about these yellow buttons. So let's not worry about that and be concerned that he doesn't have a head. This is the part of the build that nightmares are made out of, but we're going to have to tough it out. Except for when you get attacked by a LEGO set. That's when it's okay for your eyes to start watering uncontrollably. Since the pieces went flying across the room, I had to look for some alternatives. Thankfully, we have pieces left over from other builds and I could continue on this journey. Building this iconic character face has been a lot more unexpected than I thought it would be. There's a lot of formations and inner workings that really don't cross your mind when you go into this. But at least we're at the part where the face is starting to look at least 20% less creepy. Except for when you do this. But now that we got that out of the way, it's time to once again realize that something is not built correctly. Thankfully, we have handy tools nearby to solve this issue. And in this case, the pieces were off by only 1 stud. So we have them moved into the correct place, and things are looking much more normal. But our hero doesn't look quite right, so we need to add the 2 most important things that give him his identity, and most importantly, his sense of smell, which is another very, very important plumbing tool. This might have been the most awkward part of the build. When you're putting together puppet hair and a puppet hat, you've got pieces and formations that just don't feel natural. But thankfully, when all the puzzle pieces come together, it starts to take shape. And we have back of the head hair that I never thought that I would recognize before. But many hours later, here we are. And then the build hits you with something like this. You start to wonder how this is going to all come together. And I can imagine that these designers just think completely different than you and me. We think from the outside in, and they must think from the inside out. Which explains why I'm a person that just follows instructions. But at least I can follow them at an expert level. And I think that our plumber friend will benefit from that greatly. We don't want to mess up 40 years of iconic design, at least not today. Alright, moving on to the ears and the sideburns. You know, it's a couple more elements that you don't really think is something that stands out about a character. But when you build it with your own hands, it's something that you'll never forget. Mario is one of those characters that's recognized from all over the world. I mean, he's kinda like Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or John Stamos. You don't even need to mention them by name, you just know who they are. But our plumber friend is still missing something. I remember pulling on these on the title screen of Super Mario 64. And all these years later, I feel bad about it. I mean, it's something that he just simply didn't deserve. So we did the best that we could and made him truly shine in this form. But this wouldn't be a true experience without a sense of danger. The first thing we need to assemble while building our terrifying friend is his pipe. I don't know how they live in these things, but I was also surprised to see a lot of gears and gizmos for something like this. Now, I don't want to spoil the Mario movie or the video game storyline for you, but I will say that these take you to magical lands. And sometimes that's all we can hope for. Building the stem for the Piranha Beast is rather straightforward as expected. But he's pretty top-sided, so it's going to need a lot of structural integrity. Now, without doing the due diligence of studying Mario lore, I simply didn't have the time. I'm not sure if these leaves are just leaves or actual appendages. Let's be sure to be delicate, just in case. It was time for the most dangerous part of my job, and it was to build these razor-sharp piranha teeth. Just kidding, this is made out of plastic. But you can never be too careful. It seems like whenever I let my guard down, that's when the injuries occur. The next parts of this piranha mouth were rather unexpected. We have more features that I just never really stopped to recognize. And the way it comes together so cleanly is unconventional and enjoyable. I'm just glad that these don't exist in real life. These are one of the most difficult enemies to deal with in Super Mario Bros. You couldn't jump on top of it to take it out. Anytime you got close to it, it would retract back into its pipe, and it would shoot fireballs at you in a straight line. In retrospect, I don't really care for these very much, so now I'm wondering why I spent hours and hours building this. But then it came to me very clearly. I now have a way to stash away all of my savings. Better than crypto. Whether you're in last place or first place, I think we all know what this is. It might be one of the most diabolical items in video game history. It's quite literally the destroyer of friendships. But at the same time, nothing matches the amount of joy when it pops up in your item box. The ironic part is you pick it up when you're nearly in last place, so you end up completely ruining the day for whoever is leading the race, for absolutely no benefit to yourself. At first you think nothing of it. You all laugh and have a great time. But over the days, months, and years, the tension starts to build. You start getting invited to fewer holiday parties. The text messages start to appear less frequently. And then you start to wonder why. You start thinking about whether it was something you said at some point. Maybe you forgot their birthday, or you made fun of their shirt and nobody laughed. But then you remember that fateful day 4 years ago, when your Donkey Kong character was hovering around last place at Toad's Turnpike. And that's when you made the decision to throw one of these. And in the end, it was all worth it. Let's hit the brakes and veer off the path of memory lane for a minute because we need to put our cart on top of something. And there's no better place than this tiny stand. It was finally time to place the cart, the Mario, and all the characters and surroundings so we could decide that the build was indeed perfect. I hope you enjoyed the build. I'm off to build another, and in the meantime, I will catch you in the next one.